And I'm going to kind of sum up a little bit, and then you guys can share. These two men have, for years, been involved in the gay lifestyle. And recently, about a year and 3 or 4 months ago, you came here. So how did that happen, and what did God do when you came?
Matthew Wright is my nephew, and my sister and brother-in-law are here tonight, his parents. And he called me that day, and he said, it was on October 20th, and he called and he said, Uncle Bob, would you come to church, please? And I said, yeah. And I sat right where Brenda was sitting right there. And Pastor Bob spoke on coming to Jesus just like you are. And I was so ready. I knew it right there. And God changed everything in my life, my language, my thinking, everything about me. He changed it.
Now, Bobby, you had a background in church, right? Tell us about yourself growing up and what happened to kind of get you off track there a little bit.
I was just religion to death, actually. And what I like about this church in the Rock of Roseville is that they don't teach religion, they teach salvation. And I think that's wonderful. I think that's such a change for me. Because I can remember my mother shouting her hair down and shouting down the aisles and back. And as soon as we got in the car, she'd start slapping us in the face. And I asked, why? Why? And I went to the pastor and I said, what can we change about this? And he said, maybe you need a slapping in the face. So it was just a miserable time for me because I couldn't believe what they were teaching. I just couldn't. I tried, I practiced, but I eventually strayed away from God.
How many years were you kind of out of fellowship?
I was out of the church for exactly almost 22 years.
Okay. Yes. And so you had not been back in the church until about 15 months ago.
Yes.
And what happened that night? What was the thing that impacted your life that night?
Actually, it was the love and just to watch the people. I didn't know the courses, and just to watch the people and the love that they showed me, and everyone would say, it's so good to have you tonight. It's so good for you to be here. That just drew me like a magnet because I was starving to death for that. I was starving for that love. And it's here, and I felt it. And that's what drew me.
And so that night, you knelt down, right?
Yes.
At the end, Pastor Bob was sharing, and he said, come as you are. And
yes.
You came.
Yes, I did.
And then you knelt down and did what? What did you say to the Lord?
I said, God, I don't know how you can love me after the life I've lived. I don't know how I can I'm so unworthy. But I know that you are going to make me worthy. And I said, see all of these things in my life that are so ugly. Please turn them to gladness. Please turn them to beauty. And God just said, I'm going to change everything, your language, your attitude, your thinking, everything about you. That night, when I arose from that chair, I was a totally changed person. I went home, and Bob said, well, I said, I gave my heart to Jesus. And he goes, okay. Okay. That's it.
So, Bob, he went home, and then what did you think initially, and what happened to you?
I was happy for him. It's the first time I saw him truly happy. And
how many years you guys lived together?
20 years.
21 years.
And the first time you've seen him happy in 20 years?
Really, really happy. Mm-hmm. I mean, he had this glow on his face, and I'm thinking, how can I get that?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
How can I get that? So the next week he came back, and he came back home, and again there was that happiness, that glow. And the following week, I went.
Yeah.
And growing up Catholic, when you go to church, you don't speak. You don't say a word, only in response to the priest, whatever he says. So when I came here, Pastor Francis was giving, he was the speaker that night. But what got me was, as I looked around and I saw everyone just rejoicing and not being afraid to let it go. Yes. And just rejoice in his name. Yeah. And just, praise him.
Yeah.
I had never seen that. So all I could do the first night here, and Pastor Francis will tell you, we sat over there. All I could do, I cried.
Yes, he did.
Through the whole service.
Yes, he did.
But something inside of me started to open up like it's never opened up before. And it's still opening up.
Yes.
Awesome. Now tell me about your background. And I'm so blessed. I love you guys. I am just honored to know you. And, in coming, there was never any discussion like this. You've been here for over a year, and you kind of just amalgamated in. People began to love on you, and you would come regularly, and you went through an operation. But I know both of you guys, just from reading your testimony, you had addictions in your life. Just tell us about each of them. If you would just briefly, what was the strongholds that got a hold of you?
Well, when I finally admitted to myself that I was gay, my family, they turned their backs on me except for my sister and her husband and her family. And so I figured, well, I'll get married. That'll do it. It didn't. And after 5 years, I got divorced, and my dad asked me, what happened? And I told him, I couldn't lie anymore. And I told him, I'm gay. He cried. And he looked at me and asked me, what did I do wrong? And then after that, I went crazy. I booze, bars, sexual escapades. But, I tried prostitution, stripping. It was a need to be, I guess, loved and wanted. But it was the wrong path. And I've always had this little voice on my shoulder saying, Bob, don't go down that road. So I turned to drink, and I drank from like 9 at night until 4 in the morning. And then one night, I got so drunk at a bar, they threw me out, and I ended up on the curb. And a wino, old wino, just sat beside me, gave me a nudge, said, you want some wine? I said, sure, why not? And when I turned and looked at him, I saw my face on his. It was old, it was withered, and that little voice that's always been on my shoulder said, that's where you're headed. Mm-hmm. And I haven't had a drink in 36 years.